Not safe for work. What's the worst thing that's happened at your family gathering? Hi Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I will throw garbage in your garden. This didn't happen to me, but I watched it happen and it was awful. My cousin was pregnant from a guy who she had only been dating for a few months, but he was a good guy. On Christmas Eve she invited him to our family gathering, and when we were exchanging presents he grabbed a small box from the tree and was 2 seconds from getting down on one knee when that uncle jokingly says, "God, I hope you're not proposing." Everyone laughs and this poor guy is in a half bent knee, half standing pose and just looks up at that uncle and slowly powers through it and slowly gets down on one knee and proceeds to ask her if she'll marry him. She said yes and they're engaged. But it was one of the worst 45 seconds of my life. Cheers to the first heartwarming worst story I've seen so far in this soul-crushing thread. God, what an ass. I'm not one to hold a grudge, but I'd be seriously peeved about that moment for decades. Thanksgiving about 1985. Family gathering at my parents' home. Mum, dad, brother, sister, grandmas, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. all watching football. Cousin picks up the remote to mess with the volume, but turns on the VCR on accident. Full-blown Pino fills the screen. Dad leaps, grabs the remote and fumbles frantically to turn it off. Bible thumper brother and sister-in-law snatch up their kids and leave. Cousin says, "Boy, that sudden death can really get intense. This is like the equivalent of 2 kids playing with a gun they think isn't loaded. Always clear the chamber, Dad." Oh, he cleared his chamber. Alright. Great grandma's funeral in Arkansas. I have some distant third cousin, named Stormy again. This is Arkansas, and we are all gathered around the grave, and as the preacher starts to lead us in prayer you hear this awful noise. Every turns to look and there is Stormy swinging an armadillo around his head by the tail. One of my other cousins got him to put the armadillo down so we could finish the service, but I don't recall ever having seen him at another family gathering since then. My grandmother tried to shoot herself in the front yard because my mother wouldn't let me and my siblings, 6, 4 and 2, ride sitting on the back hood of my uncle's classic convertible during their neighborhood 4th of July parade. She was angry that no one would be able to see our outfits if we were seated inside the car, and while trying to shoot herself accidentally grazed my grandpa in the process. Good times. I'm going to pick my favorite stories from this thread and write a Wes Anderson style dark comedy about a dysfunctional family. It is gold. Oh, I have one. This happened like a week ago at a little get together of family at my house. My brother-in-law and his wife got into a huge argument about their new baby's medical care. The little one had a terrible case of psoriasis, and he blamed his wife for not staying on top of it, causing it to bleed. During this shouting match, Bill declared that if he was going to be raising some other man's baby, he was going to be calling the fricking shots from then on. They have been married for 10 years, and have 2 other girls. We were all so mortified, we left my house. 10 other people got into cars and went to the park. Quick edit. This was my husband's brother and his wife. It has to get pretty awkward before you leave your own house to make things better. It was brutal. Several of us had suspected she'd stepped out, but this was a bomb. My youngest brother got into my car with his salad bowl still in his hand. He got his priorities in order. Proposed to my girlfriend at my birthday party and she said no, then told me she had been cheating on me. This was post cake. Bullet dodged. Think of it this way. At that exact point in time, that was probably one of the best outcomes. Oh yay, I couldn't be happier now. She ended up getting back with her ex, guy she cheated on me with, who had cheated on her I think it was 4 times. Fast forward, now it's 5. Itch. Did you have sex with her ex? That's what it sounds like. Aunts, uncles and dad start arguing over my grandfather's possessions after his passing in his house after his funeral. Lots of yelling, pushing, get the frick out that day. Eventually pulled my dad out of the house in an effort to save the family. They never recovered. My uncle passed away without ever speaking with my dad again, and the others speak a bit to each other. but we haven't had any family events. It's been 3 years. My mother-in-law's boyfriend randomly, out of nowhere just says, in case anyone was wondering, I'm against gay marriage. My mother-in-law, to her credit, looks at him and just said, did anyone ask? It was an awkward couple of minutes. Dude wanted a fight. He usually does. He's, kind of a jackass. My alcoholic uncle got so drunk at his own daughter's wedding that he pissed on the wedding cake in front of half the wedding party. He quit drinking after that. Leahy, you drunk old frick. We had a huge family dinner at a very fancy restaurant. My great aunt decided to move a very fancy pot of flowers with some peacock feathers stuck in it out of the way. In this case, out of the way meant right above the candles. It turns out peacock feathers burn incredibly fast and produce a lot of smoke. The whole restaurant had to be evacuated. To be honest, it wasn't really that bad. The dinner had been incredibly boring. 14-year me certainly thought the fire made things more interesting. 14-year you was right. A dead rat inside the water tank. This one day we woke up in a relative's house after a gathering night. We found the morning water taste weird, so my cousin and host checked the water tank. The rat was floating there. Everyone in his house headed to the hospital instantly. No biggie. We once had a dead monkey inside our water tank. We noticed something was wrong with the water, but nobody bothered to look inside the tank. Me and my father took a peek inside the tank after like 3 days. The smell was horrible. The monkey was bloated to the size of a gorilla. I have the smallest hands, so I had to remove the monkey by my bare hands. The monkey disintegrated upon my touch. I was left with a handful of fur and skin. Scooped up the leftover fur, skin, flesh and whatnot by hand. Proceeded to use the same water for drinking, bathing without issue. It was too expensive to empty the tank and clean it, so we took a chance. This is a very common occurrence where I live. The heat forces monkeys to climb into water tanks to drink water. What in the frick? Looking back, it is really gross, not to mention a health hazard. But I grew up being exposed to all kinds of grotesque stuff. An incident like that is pretty routine around here. My 60-year-old aunt showed me her new boobies and told me she'd take my V card and show me what good pussy feels like. She did this at the dinner table. Man, I have to know more. Is she just freaking nuts? Was she drunk? Just a massive slut? Or are you like a perfect 10 out of 10 with a sexual reputation that even your family members are drawn to? If it was so casual, clearly she does stuff like this a lot. What happened afterwards? Did everyone freak out? Did they just ignore it? Oh no, I'm no prize. She was a druggie, alcoholic that was property of a biker gang at the time. If that gives you a better idea. Introduced to a distant cousin for the first time who was a 10. She was beautiful, and I was told that she was deaf. I had never met a deaf person. We were both 15 years old. I shook her hand and said to my brother who was standing next to me, she is a babe. She started to laugh. I read lips, she said. Holy it, when I first read that comment I thought you meant she was 10 years old. Was celebrating an uncle's birthday and we realized about 15 minutes into it that grandma died. Everyone lost their mind, because she was 75 and seemed fine 10 minutes before. Died of a massive brain aneurysm. Whole family was devastated. I still took some cake. I'll piggyback off of yours, because it's so similar down to being at an uncle's birthday party. My 53-year-old mother stood up, said I don't feel well and dropped dead from an aneurysm in front of all her friends and family. I wasn't there when it happened, but the funeral was particularly grim, because almost everybody there had just witnessed her death. She was the baby sister to the uncle whose birthday it was and they were best friends. It traumatized him and he no longer celebrates his birthday. Jesus. I'm so sorry. Thank you. I take consolation in that she died instantly with little pain and her last moments were spent with those she loved dearly and who loved her dearly. My father had died suddenly 6 years earlier and she never fully recovered from the loss, so I like to think that she was simply ready to be reunited with him. I still took some cake. probably what your grandmother would have wanted. My brother throwing a temper tantrum at age 30. It has been pretty common for him to blow up about little it all his life. It was his youngest daughter's 2nd birthday and he was in a ratty mood all day even though our mum and his wife had taken care of everything. It came to a head when it was about time to do the cake. It was a kind of tall cake with a carousel on the top. The dog bumped into the table and the cake shifted a little, almost knocking the carousel over. He stood up and said something like, "God damn it. Your freaking dog is ruining everything." My mum said, "Calm down. The cake is fine." He got in her face and said, "Don't tell me what to do, itch." At that point my brother and stepdad got up and kind of surrounded him ready to kick his ass. After a few seconds he finally stormed out of the house and left. I feel the need to reiterate at this point that he was 30 years old and it was his daughter's 2nd birthday. I am floored that someone like this duped someone not only into marrying him, but breeding with him. This alone makes me concerned for the behavior his daughter will pick up from him. She is probably going to spend her life terrified and thinking if she can just be good enough, he'll be happy. And then marry the same person and spend her life blaming herself when they don't get nice weather or hit a red light on their way somewhere. Okay Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I will throw garbage in your garden.